And in this particular case, the medical examiner was shocked to find that the eyeballs were gone.
Number 30, Gary Heidnik.
July 1st will be the 30th anniversary of the conviction of Gary Heidnik. He is responsible for one of the most grotesque series of crimes ever to happen in Philadelphia.
Maybe you've never heard of Gary Heidnik, but if you've seen The Silence of the Lambs, then you know his primary MO. Between 1986 and 1987, Heidnik kidnapped 6 women off the streets of Philadelphia and took them to his house of horrors, chaining them up in an underground pit. He would deprive them of food and water and subject them to acts of humiliation, all while hoping to impregnate the captives in order to create a perfect race of children. 2 of his 6 captives died in captivity. Luckily, one victim escaped in March of 1987 and alerted the police, leading to Heidnik's arrest. His story then greatly influenced Thomas Harris, who partly modeled Buffalo Bill after Heidnik.
Mister, my family will pay cash. Whatever ransom you're asking for, they'll pay it.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Number 29, Charles William Davis.
That's her, isn't it, Charlie?
She still had the score.
When it comes to serial killers openly taunting the police, you probably think of the Zodiac or BTK. No one thinks of Charles William Davis. Between 1974 and 77, Davis committed multiple sexual assaults in Baltimore and murdered at least 4 women, often posing as some type of helpful citizen before attacking. But perhaps more perversely, Davis anonymously called emergency services after disposing of the bodies along highways or in wooded areas, reporting the crimes and giving them directions to the corpse's location. It was just one of his many sick thrills. Luckily, his crimes eventually caught up to him, and he has remained imprisoned since 1977.
Yes, this confession came in a patrol car, an unmarked patrol car with an investigator with the Seminole County Sheriff's Office. And I want to warn you that William Davis was quite frank with the information he shared with the Seminole County Sheriff's investigator.
Number 28, Dale Hausner and Samuel Dietman.
When he got to the mortuary, one of our friends that owns it, he said, Mrs. Estrada, he was shot once in the lung and it penetrated 2 inches from his spine or an inch from his spine, and he suffocated immediately and went straight to our maker.
Between May 2005 and August 2006, Phoenix was plagued by a rash of drive-by shootings. While police initially believed that just one perp was responsible, the shootings were eventually traced to 2 men, Dale Hausner and Samuel Dietman. The men prowled the streets of Phoenix, often under the influence of methamphetamine, and committed dozens of drive-by shootings, killing at least 6 and injuring 19. They are also known to have targeted animals. Police were eventually contacted by a concerned friend of Dietman's after he drunkenly confessed to the crimes, and they were both arrested following an investigation. Dietman was sentenced to life and Hausner to death, although he took his own life in 2013.
Looking at Dale, I believe he was born that way. He didn't turn into this monster growing up. And looking at Sam Dietman, in this case, he turned into a follower of Dale's and would do anything for Dale just to seem to make him happy.
Number 27, Charles Cullen.
You've been in here a while.
9 years.
You knew it was wrong.
Yes, I did.
At the time.
At the time and later.
Are you sorry what you did?
Yes. But like I said, I don't know if I would have stopped.
We trust that our medical practitioners know what they're doing, so when that trust is intentionally broken, we become unimaginably terrified. Charles Cullen worked for years as a nurse at various hospitals throughout New Jersey and Pennsylvania, but he used his position to administer lethal doses of medication to vulnerable patients. Many of the drugs he used were difficult to trace, and his victims were often already ill, both of which allowed the deaths to go unnoticed or uninvestigated. As such, no one really knows how many people Cullen murdered throughout the years. 29 victims have been confirmed, and Cullen personally confessed to 40, but experts believe the number could be in the hundreds.
He was able to move from hospital to hospital without so much as a bad reference. Cullen would kill another 13 people at Somerset in 13 months and try and kill 3 more before 2 detectives, a state bureaucrat, and a female nurse finally connected the dots.
Number 26, Herbert Mullen.
The earthquake was going to take California into the sea, and he had to perform ritual sacrifices to prevent the earthquake from knocking California into the sea.
He was voted most likely to succeed in high school, but Herbert Mullen had mental illness. By his mid-20s, Mullen had already been in numerous care facilities and was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, which was exacerbated by heavy drug use. He started to believe that earthquakes could be prevented if Mother Nature received enough blood sacrifices. So, on October 13, 1972, he beat 55-year-old Lawrence White to death with a baseball bat. Over the next couple of months, Mullen would murder 12 more people, including a priest. Mullen's defense team argued that he was legally insane, but because his murder showed premeditation, he was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. He died in 2022.
A person who is born with schizophrenia dormant, and it does become full-blown illness, is born to be ill, but not to kill.
Number 25, John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo.
A week ago tonight, the shooting spree began, and 7 days later, the callous killer may have claimed his 9th victim. Right now, police are on the scene of a deadly shooting with eerie similarities to the others. A man was shot dead tonight while pumping gas just outside Manassas, Virginia.
When it comes to serial killers, we typically think of personal attacks like stabbings or strangulation. We rarely think of sniper rifles. Throughout October of 2002, the Washington area was besieged by a series of random sniper attacks, the victims being shot from long distance while doing routine activities like pumping gas or walking in parking lots. The attacks were completely random and totally unforeseeable, which only added to the terror. They were eventually linked to John Allen Muhammad, the mastermind, and his much younger accomplice, Lee Boyd Malvo. 10 people were killed in the shootings, and 3 more were injured. Even worse, police later linked the duo to a rash of shootings that occurred in the previous months, bringing their total body count to 17.
What do you think of the fact that this may be over?
Oh, I hope it is. I really do. I really hope for people's peace of mind.
Number 24, Richard Lawrence Marquette. This killer has the unique distinction of being the first person to be added as an 11th entry on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. This occurred in June 1961, when the dismembered remains of Joan Cottle were found in Portland. When the crime was linked to Marquette, police searched his home and found body parts wrapped in newspaper inside his refrigerator. He was imprisoned but released on parole in 1973. But his freedom didn't last long. In April 1975, a fisherman found the dismembered remains of Betty Wilson. Police once again traced this to Marquette, and while confessing to Wilson's murder, he also confessed to murdering a 3rd victim in 1974. He brought them to her skeletal remains, but she has never been identified. Number 23, Charles Albright.
The eyes had been cut out so precisely that when the eyelids were shut, there were no scars, there was no bleeding, no sign of any bleeding. It was surgically precise.
When someone is nicknamed the eyeball killer, you know you're in for something gross. Charles Albright was considered highly intelligent, with an interest in biology and anatomy from a young age. Unfortunately, he did not use that interest for good. Despite early promise, Albright led a troubled life, including multiple run-ins with the law. These crimes graduated to murder in the late 80s and early 90s, when Albright killed 4 people. 3 of the victims were found without their eyeballs, as Albright had surgically removed them and taken them with him. The eyes were never recovered. Despite the evidence being mostly circumstantial, Albright was convicted of 1 murder and sentenced to life in prison.
They immediately called the medical examiner and said, check the eyes. And they got a call back that said, the eyes are missing.
Number 22, Harrison Graham.
I gotta say, that smell is worse than ever.
Is it?
In the summer of 1987, Harrison Graham was living off a disability pension and selling drugs out of his Philadelphia apartment. But it was also around this time that neighbors reported a rancid smell emanating from Graham's apartment. Police were called and they broke down the door, which Graham had barricaded. Graham was not there, but police found the apartment in a horrific state, including dirty mattresses and a pile of garbage over a foot thick. They also found the decomposing remains and skeletons of a number of women. A further search of the entire complex uncovered human remains in the basement and inside a duffel bag on the roof. In total, Graham had murdered 7 women, and he was convicted of all 7 deaths.
You want to come in?
Hell no. I'm staying right here.
Number 21. Howard Unruh. Mass murderer Howard Unruh committed what is often regarded as the first mass shooting in modern history, a horrific event known as the Walk of Death. By September 1949, Unruh was in the throes of significant mental illness, exacerbated by constant arguments with his neighbors and his experiences in World War II. Around 9:20 a.m. on the morning of September 6th, Unruh left his apartment and committed the Walk of Death. Over the next 12 minutes, he walked through his Camden neighborhood and shot people indiscriminately, killing 13 and injuring 3. No one was safe, including a number of young victims. He never showed remorse for the crime and later told a psychologist, quote, "I'd have killed 1,000 if I had enough bullets." Number 20. The Harp Brothers. This duo holds a special name in true crime history, yet few people have heard of them. Perhaps that's owing to how long ago their crimes were. Micajah Big Harp and Wiley Little Harp are the first known serial killers in American history.
Stories we heard make your blood run cold. I hear tell they move through the wilderness like the natives themselves. Silent. 2 lurking devils, just waiting to spring on any unsuspected passersby.
Their crimes spanned the southeastern United States in the late 18th century. Taking advantage of the remote isolation of the Appalachian Mountains, the brothers would kill settlers coming south after the American Revolution. Their true number of victims remains unknown, but most estimates place it between 39 and 50.
Beat me and I'll submit myself to the courts and the noose without further protest. That's what you want, isn't it?
Their actions attracted vigilante attention, and Micajah was brutally killed by a posse in 1799. Wiley was eventually caught and executed in 1804. Number 19. Alexander Pichushkin. One of the most notorious Russian serial killers in modern history, Alexander Pichushkin killed up to 60 people between 1992 and 2006. He became known as the chessboard killer and Bitsa Park maniac, after the Moscow park where most of his crimes occurred.
It was here, exactly at this place, where we found one of the victims. Of course, when we found him, it wasn't a pleasant sight.
Many of his victims were elderly vagrants whom he attracted with the promise of vodka, company, and a good chat. He would then strike them with a bottle or a hammer. Pichushkin was finally caught in 2006 after killing co-worker Marina Moskalyova. Surveillance footage from a train station captured Moskalyova with Pichushkin, and he was finally taken in for questioning.
I only had one thought. I wanted him to show us as many as he could, to tell us everything. Where he dumped people, where he left them. I wanted as much evidence as I could get.
He readily confessed to his crimes and is now spending life in prison. Number 18. Dorothea Puente. Female serial killers don't often get recognition, even if they're as bad as Dorothea Puente. Known in the media as the Death House landlady, Puente operated a boarding house in Sacramento that took in tenants who were elderly, developmentally disabled, or had substance use issues.
This is where Dorothea would bring her victims after giving them the drug and alcohol combination, and then bringing them in here and leaving them on the floor until she could prepare them at a later time.
Between 1982 and 1988, Puente killed 9 of her patrons and committed fraud by collecting their pensions and Social Security checks. 7 bodies were buried on the property of her boarding house, and another was dumped in a box by a river. Puente was eventually caught after killing Alvaro Montoya, as his social worker had reported him missing. She was convicted of 3 homicides and given life in prison.
After deliberating for 24 days, the jury found Dorothea Puente guilty of 3 murders, but were deadlocked on all the other charges.
She died in 2011 at the age of 82. Number 17. David Parker Ray. Better known as the Toy Box Killer, David Parker Ray is not officially a serial killer, as he has never been lawfully linked to a homicide. However, many experts believe that he is responsible for up to 60 killings.
When Ray died in 2002 and took that knowledge to his grave, it left investigators searching for answers.
We're convinced that there are remains. It's just a matter of locating them.
Ray terrorized the American Southwest from 1957 to 1999. He would kidnap women and torture them in a trailer he called his toy box, before drugging and abandoning them or killing them.
The toy box is where Ray's fantasies came to life. There, he dominated his victims.
The details are too horrible to get into here. While he was never convicted of murder, Ray received 224 years in prison for abduction and torture. He died of a heart attack in 2002. Number 16. Karl Panzram. The awful crimes of Karl Panzram range from burglary and arson to sexual assault and murder. Born in 1891, Panzram had a difficult childhood with strict and abusive parents. As an adult, he moved around a lot and was in and out of prison for various offenses. In 1920, he bought a yacht and sexually assaulted and murdered 10 sailors in New York. His crimes continued in southern Africa, where he targeted young and vulnerable victims, which he continued to do on his return to the States. From prison, he confessed to 21 murders, but may have killed over 100. He was executed in 1930 at the age of 39.
Do you think he was sincere in not having any remorse, or was it just a guise?
Well, I think he was so full of hatred and with such a need, a compulsion to kill, that perhaps it never entered his mind.
Number 15. Samuel Little. When we think of the most infamous serial killers in American history, we think of Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, and John Wayne Gacy. Few ever bring up Samuel Little, even though he has the highest victim count of any American serial killer. Little's life of crime spanned decades.
The FBI believes all of his confessions are credible. Some of the bodies were never found. He was already serving a life sentence for 3 murders in the 1980s.
His first confirmed victim was 32-year-old Annie Stewart, who was strangled to death on October 11, 1981. However, his killing spree may have started over a decade earlier with the murder of Mary Jo Brosley in December 1970. After Little was arrested in 2012, he confessed to killing 93 women.
Mindy Lepree's murder was one of the few that did get reported. The deaths of most of the other women he claims to have killed never made the press.
The FBI has officially linked Little to 60 of these 93 killings. By comparison, Bundy killed at least 20, Dahmer 17, and Gacy 33. Number 14. Robert Pickton. Canada has also produced its fair share of serial killers, including Robert Pickton. The son of pig farmers in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, he and his brother David worked from a young age and were picked on for stinking of pig manure in school. After inheriting the farm, the brothers held raves on the property in the 1990s.
And I'm telling you, I did a few stupid things in my life, which I don't want to recall about, but I'll explain them as the tape goes on.
A police search in 2002 uncovered the remains of several missing women. Targeting unhoused people and sex workers in Vancouver's downtown East Side, Pickton had been murdering women on the farm. He was charged with 26 murders, but confessed to 49. It's believed that Pickton fed some remains to his pigs. Some may have been mixed with pork and sold to the public.
With today's 4 new charges, an unhappy historical moment for Canada.
This case is now the largest serial killer investigation in Canadian history.
Number 13. Luis Garavito. Despite the fact that he is the most prolific serial killer in modern history, Luis Garavito is little known outside of his native Colombia. As a child, he was beaten by his father, tormented in school, and abused by neighbors. He grew into an angry and antisocial man, obsessed with abusing male minors.
While you're cowering behind the couch while your drunken father is at the door and making everybody scared, someday I will be drunk and come home and everybody will be cowering when I enter the room.
He would sometimes wear a disguise to lure his victims to isolated spots. The horrific nature of what would happen next is just too gruesome to talk about here.
Then, with terrifying detachment, Garavito related the details of his crimes.
In 1999, he was apprehended and eventually sentenced to a combined 1,853 years in prison. He's officially linked to 193 murders, but his confession would bring this to 221. Number 12. Robert Hansen. This serial killer was especially terrifying for the way he hunted down his victims. In his youth, Hansen was unpopular and became obsessed with the idea of revenge, especially against women. In 1967, he moved from Iowa to Anchorage, Alaska, where he worked as a baker. However, in the 1970s, he began abducting women, sexually assaulting them and flying them out to remote locations. He would then hunt them through the Alaskan wilderness.
I think everybody was looking at him real seriously because he made a good suspect when you looked into him. He had a pretty extensive criminal background.
An escaped victim, Cindy Paulson, warned police, who at first took Hansen's word over hers. Fortunately, famous criminal profiler John Douglas helped lead investigators back to Hansen. It's believed that Hansen killed between 17 and 21 women.
Hansen accompanied troopers into the field to find more of his victims, represented by X's on his map. A total of 8 victims were found. Some places on the map went unexplored.
He died in 2014 while serving life in prison. Number 11. Clementine Barnabet. Modern historians have cast doubt on whether or not Clementine Barnabet actually committed the killings for which she's been blamed. However, she was officially convicted of 1 homicide and personally confessed to killing 35. Following her arrest, Barnabet claimed that she was given a magical hoodoo talisman by a priestess of the Church of Sacrifice. Wanting to test its validity, she embarked on a series of axe murders throughout the state of Louisiana. She was eventually caught and sentenced to life in prison. However, she was subsequently released in 1923 and disappeared from the history books. Number 10. Gerard John Schaefer.
He's one of the most extreme cases of the modern serial killer that we have ever known in criminal history.
In his mugshot, Gerard John Schaefer looks like an everyday man. His hair combed to the right and a friendly smile plastered on his face. However, a second glance may be warranted after learning that he potentially killed 30 people throughout the 60s and 70s. Schaefer was a Florida sheriff's deputy when he kidnapped 2 teenage women and tied them to a tree in the forest. The women escaped after Schaefer received a call on his radio.
Had these 2 girls not been made of strong stuff, they would not have lived to tell the story, and Schaefer would have never been caught.
Sadly, Susan Place and Georgia Jessup, whom he kidnapped 2 months later, were not so lucky.
He takes the 2 young girls by force to the woods near some swamps that border the ocean.
In 1973, Schaefer was convicted of their murders and given 2 life sentences, but he's suspected of having over 30 victims. Number 9. Vicki Dawn Jackson. While quite a big name in Texas, Vicki Dawn Jackson never gained national attention, despite killing at least 10 people in a 3-month span from December 2000 to February 2001. Working as a nurse in North Texas, Jackson used a paralyzer called mivacurium chloride on her elderly patients, which prevented their ability to breathe. The deaths didn't raise any red flags owing to the age of the patients, but alarm bells started ringing once administrators noticed the missing mivacurium chloride. They came to suspect Jackson, as she was often the last person reported in the victims' rooms before their deaths. A syringe used to administer mivacurium chloride was eventually found in her trash can, and she was subsequently charged and sentenced to life in prison. Number 8. Ronald Dominique. Those from Louisiana may recognize Ronald Dominique as the Bayou Strangler, a serial killer who killed at least 23 men between 1997 and 2006. Dominique frequented gay bars around Houma, Louisiana, and would assault and kill the men he took home.
We're not dealing with some very clever, conniving killer that has actually planned out his pleasurable activities in a meticulous way. Clearly there is a method that works, but beyond that, there seems to be no care, consideration for these acts.
In 2006, however, a survivor of Dominique's contacted the police to voice his suspicions about the man. Dominique was arrested after DNA matched him to recovered corpses, putting an end to his crimes.
We went to court. Mr. Dominique pled guilty, and he was sentenced to 8 consecutive life sentences. When you get a life sentence in Louisiana, you leave jail in a pine box.
Number 7. Israel Keyes.
It's clear just how cold and calculating he was.
Between 1998 and 2001, Israel Keyes served in the United States Army. Fellow soldiers described him as a quiet man who would frequently drink large amounts of alcohol. Keyes began a criminal life committing bank robberies, burglaries, and arson. He also killed at least 4 people, although he's suspected of a further 7.
Investigators say Keyes is a textbook serial killer. Like other famous killers in the past, he took pleasure in the act of taking a life.
He talked about the rush that he got out of it, the adrenaline and kind of the high from doing it, and I think, unfortunately, I think he enjoyed what he was doing.
Perhaps his most famous victim is Samantha Koenig. The 18-year-old was kidnapped from work, assaulted, and killed. Her body left in a shed while Keyes went on a family vacation.
He indicates to Samantha that his goal is to get money, and if he gets money, that he intends to let her go. There was no truth to that.
Upon returning, he took a ransom photo, pretending she was still alive. Keyes was caught using her debit card and arrested, but he took his own life while awaiting trial. Number 6. The Long Island serial killer. In late 2010 and early 2011, a number of deceased women were found along Ocean Parkway on Long Island.
This may be a cold case for some time.
It's unreal, and I'm just numb.
Kickstarting one of the most fascinating serial killer stories of the 21st century. The remains of the so-called Gilgo Four were found in December 2010, and the remains of 6 more victims were discovered in the following months, bringing the killer's body count to at least 11.
One by one, the bodies were identified, and with each name came the story of a troubled life cut short.
The case was cold for many years, but a major break occurred in July 2023 when a Manhattan architect named Rex Heuermann was arrested in connection with the murders. As of 2025, Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to all counts of murder, and his trial has yet to begin.
He's going to make a mistake. They all do. And we're going to get this guy.
Number 5. Salvatore Perrone.
Sal, why did you do it?
Nicknamed the Son of Sal, Staten Island man Salvatore Perrone turned his frustrations with life into a bloody killing spree. His wife had left him and his business was failing, leaving him broke. In 2012, he began roaming the streets of Brooklyn and entering stores with Middle Eastern merchants. Arriving at closing time when the stores were empty, Perrone shot and killed 3 merchants with a sawed-off rifle.
His MO is still unclear, but police and witnesses say Perrone was trying to sell women's clothing at the various locations, mostly small boutiques and 99-cent stores.
After police searched his home, they found a 12-gauge shotgun, ammunition, and duct tape. He also carried around a so-called kill kit that included switchblades, a serrated knife, bleach, and latex gloves.
I think it's reasonable to assume that he was going to continue doing this, and by arresting him, we have saved lives.
Perrone was convicted of all 3 killings and sentenced to 75 years to life in prison. Number 4. Lydia Sherman. An old-timey serial killer also known as the Derby Poisoner. Lydia Sherman lived in the eastern United States between 1824 and 1878. She seemingly had no regard for human life, not even her own children. She reportedly killed 3 husbands with arsenic in a span of 7 years, and disposed of 8 children the same way. All of these deaths were officially attributed to typhoid fever at the time, with no one being any the wiser to Sherman's secret life as a serial killer. Sherman's crimes eventually caught up to her, however, and she was sentenced to life in prison. She died of cancer at 53 in 1878. Number 3. Amelia Dyer. When it comes to 19th century serial killers, few are as prominent, or as sick, as Amelia Dyer. But even then, her name has mostly been lost to time. Living in Victorian England, Dyer was a baby farmer, an old practice in which people took in orphaned children in exchange for money. Unfortunately, Dyer had depraved ulterior motives for doing so.
Amelia Dyer was a murderer, and she knew what she was doing. This was a calculated career plan that she'd embarked on and sustained over 30 years, come what may.
She killed her charges, and while Dyer has only been officially linked to 6 deaths, her body count is often theorized to be somewhere between 200 and 400. If that's true, it would make Dyer one of the most prolific killers in history. Dyer was finally caught in 1896 and hanged at London's Newgate prison. Her last words? "I have nothing to say."
Her death closed a casebook on one of the most deadly serial killer cases in British history.
Number 2. Patrick Mackay.
His name was Patrick Mackay. He became known simply as the psychopath.
Patrick Mackay may have been one of Britain's most serious serial killers.
In his early 20s, Englishman Patrick Mackay became obsessed with Nazism. He had multiple substance use disorders and claimed to have committed his first killing by drowning an unhoused man in the River Thames. A few years later, on March 21, 1975, he fatally attacked a priest with an axe.
Once again, the circumstances of the murder shocked even hardened police officers.
I've been to several gory scenes before, but I've never seen so many injuries on a murdered person before this.
Following Mackay's arrest, he became the prime suspect in dozens of killings, most of which occurred after the victim was robbed. Mackay has been officially tied to 3 deaths, but he personally claims to have killed 11. He was sentenced to life in prison and remains there to this day.
Detective Chief Inspector Lou Hart looked deep into Mackay's eyes during one haunting and memorable interview. He believes Mackay should never be released.
Number 1. Karl Denke. This man's lack of mainstream attention is baffling, considering the extent and severity of his crimes. Accurately known as the Forgotten Cannibal, Denke was a Prussian man who killed up to 42 unhoused men between 1903 and 1924 and ate their remains. Denke was a well-liked organist at his local Lutheran church and ran a food shop that sold various kinds of meat. Yeah, you can guess what people now suspect. Denke was caught in 1924, but took his own life before questioning could begin. When police searched his home, they found countless body parts. His motivation and much of his grisly story remains unknown. Which little-known killers do you know? Tell us about them in the comments below.
He was going to prevent cataclysmic earthquakes by killing people.